Good to have you on board. If you have a blow dryer, you might want to dig one out if you've got it with you, perfect. Or if you have one just to dry the background, it's really not a needed thing. If you don't have one, that's okay. And paper towel, if you've got it, would be handy to have. I also discovered an interesting trick with the paper towel. Just it was just kind of random. So in my paint tray, I have extra little spots. So I just put the paper towel in there, and then I can wipe my brush as I go along. So it's right there all the time instead of having spare extra. So I don't have it in my hand anymore. And brushes, I've got a 0, I've got a 3, and I've got a mop brush, a bigger brush, because we're going to do the outside of these two animals too. So if you have a bigger brush, it's just less strokes. And that could be if you have an 8, or if you have even bigger than that, it's up to you. The cards themselves, I use a 9 by 12 inch piece of paper when I'm going to paint. So I have a 9 by 12, and I fold it in half, which makes it a 6 by 9 or 9 by 6. So I fold that in half, and then I just fold it a couple of times and then tear that. So if you fold it a couple of times, usually it comes across pretty clear. And then I'm folding that in half again for my card. Now I have a card that will open, and I'm going to paint on the front, well, whichever one is the front for you. So when you tape that down onto your paper, just if you want it to open a certain way, just remember, or just put a little arrow so that it opens the right way. So if you're painting upright and it's on the other side, then somebody has to read the card backwards, which is funny. So we're ready, we're at time. And so let's do our 3 deep breaths. And we do that to just settle everything down and just get into art mode. So first, deep breath in, and when you hold your breath at the very top, only for a second or two, not to get lightheaded, but just for a second, and then just say to yourself, pause or hold, and then just release and drop your hands right down to the floor and let any tension just drip off, so that it gives you that release of stress and tension that we all can hold sometimes in our neck. So first, deep breath in, and hold it for a second, or pause and release. Really let that go. It's that time of year where we're trying to get a lot done, so sometimes we get tight in our shoulders. Second deep breath in, and hold it for a second and release. Really drop those shoulders down as far as you can. And our third deep breath in, and hold it and release. Let everything just go away. If you have troubles at the end of this class, if you want to bring them back, you're welcome to. If they've gone in the period of this hour, of this gift of an hour that you give yourselves, perfect. That's great. So with that, let's get going. We have our drawing drawn on the screen. We have the duck, the Christmas duck, and we have the Christmas kitty. And we will do both we'll go back and forth and do both. So we have our duck and we have our kitty. And we're going to paint this background. So I'm using just clear water. So you'll want a couple of containers of water if you haven't got that already. And you want your paper towel, a blow dryer, and I've got a larger brush. This is what I'll use today is a number 8 brush, and I'm just using the clear water, just clean water, and I'm going to go around my duck. So I'm just going to paint around the edges. So that's what we're going to do, just start to put a bit of color. First, we're just using water. We'll just try to get in. It'll take you a minute or so just to try and get in as close to the edges as you can. And you can also look on an angle and see if you've missed any spots. They will be dry. You'll see that they won't be the shininess that the water will give it. So just use, if you can take your picture and put it on an angle to see if you've missed any spots, but we're just getting that wet first around the head. So again, I'm just lifting it up a little bit to see in the light where I might have missed some of the color or some of the water. And I've got a little bit on his foot, so I'm just going to tap that off. And I'm going to use a color called phthalo blue. If you have a different color blue you want to use, that's okay. Phthalo blue is nice and bright. I'm just popping that color on. Because it's wet, it's going to move. And I'm not looking for total consistency of color everywhere. If it's lighter or darker in spots, that will be part of my background. And if it's a little bit spotty, that's okay. It's a lot to go around all of the duck, so take your time, no hurry. And I've just got a little bit on his coat, so I'm just going to tap that off. And you want to remember underneath that coat, down around those feet near the bottom. And if you've got around the duck painted, we'll move over to the cat. And we'll do the same with the cat. We'll go around the outside with just clear water all around the ears, down around the side of the body, around that tail, just in clear water. So we're looking for a nice soft background. Again, it doesn't matter if it's uneven in tone, if it's lighter or darker, but adding water primes the paper and just gets it ready to receive the paint. And the paint goes on a little more smoothly by adding water first. It also allows you to use just a little bit less paint. So I have a little bit of water on my ear. I'm just going to tap that off with paper towel. And again, you can check by holding your paper in the light. So if you look, you can see that I've missed a spot here. So I'm just going to use my dampened brush, move that water around. So wherever I've missed a spot, I should be able to see that just with the light. So just clear water all around the cat or kitty. And we'll add sap green, which is a light, like a sagey green. So we'll pop that on all around. And again, lighter and darker colors on your background are totally acceptable. And if you're making more than one of these, just by being able to make a card in watercolor, if you don't ever want to go to the store and buy a card, this is a perfect opportunity. When people receive your art that you've hand painted, they tend to keep it a lot longer and really enjoy it. Some people even frame them. So be proud of what you're doing. Not in a boastful way, but be proud that what you've done, you've accomplished something that not everyone can do or chooses to do. Well, I say not everyone can do. I think everyone is an artist. They just don't know it yet. And I'll be seeing my grandchildren this Christmas, and I just may give them some cards that I hand painted. They're always very graciously happy to receive them. Sometimes I paint dinosaurs for my little Blake. He's 6 now, so maybe dinosaurs is his thing, but we'll see. So you can see there's a little bit of darker here, a little bit of darker, some light spots, and that's totally okay. I'm just adding on a little bit darker on the one side. It looks just a little bit lighter than I want, so I'm just going to throw on a little bit of extra paint on the one side. And again, a mottled background looks just fine. And I've got a little bit of pooling of water at the bottom, so I'm just going to tap that off with a paper towel. So if your backgrounds are really wet and you like to dry them before we move on, now is the time. Go ahead and pull out your blow dryer, and I'll mute myself and I'll blow dry a little bit as well. But take your time and blow dry so that when we put on the next colors, they're not um, starring as we put the colors on. They're not starting to run as if we put the red hat on. The red won't run into the blue. So go ahead and blow dry, and I'll do the same, and I'll be right back. And if you want to know if your art is dry, if you use the back of your hand, use the back of your hand, not the front. We have oil naturally in our palm, so use the back. And if it's wet, if you'll feel if it's cold, it may still just be a little bit wet. It should be room temperature or warm. So the next color I'm going to do, I'm going to work on the hat. So we're going to paint this hat, and we'll paint the bow as well. So we're going into red. I'm using a number 3 pointed brush and just red paint. I'm leaving this little section in the center. I'm just doing the tail end red. And then moving up onto the hat, leaving that little section. And I'll leave that little patch. Just paint around that. Just doing the outside edges first, and then I'll fill in the middle. Long way from where I live, Paula. And before you move on to the bow, you can just check and see if there are any spots that you want to touch up. Add a little more red. The paint will dry 20 to 30% lighter than when you put it on. So if you want to go a little darker, now's your opportunity. And I'll also do the bow. Great big Christmas bow for our duck. And we will be outlining. So if you've gone beyond the border of your pencil line, that will be adjusted or corrected before we're finished. I'm just going to move over to the cat while I still have red on my brush. And I'm going to paint the top of the hat. I'm leaving the little pom-pom at the top, but I'm painting the top of the hat red. So I'm leaving that little section below that's white and just painting the hat part. I'm moving back to the duck and I'm going to paint. I'm using ochre, still using my number 3 brush. I'm going to paint the legs ochre, the legs and the little feet. And the other foot. And while I have ochre out, I'm going to paint the beak. Now it's kind of good going doing 2 projects at the same time where you can see how if you need to let a certain section dry, then we have a whole nother project we can work on while that dries. I don't want to do any coloring around the beak or near the feet until they're dry. So I'm going to work on my kitty now. Now the cat, I'm using black paint for the body, but I'm adding a lot of water. So I want it to be a really soft gray. So this started out black, but by adding a lot of water, it's going to turn quite a lot lighter. So even lighter than that, a little bit more water. You'll see as you add more water, you can spread that out and it gets even lighter. So this is what we're going to do for the body. So I'm going to paint the whole body, including the ears, the tail, right to the side, but I'm not painting that little white rim around the hat. So I'm going to leave that part. Leave that white, but I'm going right up to the ears, the other ear, down the side, leaving the white rim of the hat, and coming right down the body. I'm just using really thinned out black paint that turns gray. And I'm going right over everything, right over those Christmas lights, right over the Christmas wires, right down to the tip of the tail. Believe it or not, we were at the halfway mark, and the card that Dorothy said stop at has a reindeer on it. It says, "When I move my body, I feel empowered, cleansed, and strong." So the times that I sit and don't do much of anything, I don't have the same amount of energy as when I get moving. So movement is great to help you feel a little stronger and your body is cleansing itself. That's my anatomy for today. So we'll move back over. We've got our cat painted. Maybe it's not as light or as dark as you want. We are going to do some embellishments on that cat, so we'll just let that sit to dry and we'll move back over to our little duck. And we had sage green or sap green on our brush before. We used water for the background for around the cat. We're not going to use water. It's more paint than water. And we're going to paint that little coat in sap green. So it's going to be a little bit darker than the background for our cat. And that bow should be dry at this point, so we won't interfere with that. And we have a triangle around the eye for our duck. So I'm putting yellow on my brush. This is just a bright yellow. If you have a dimmer yellow, as long as it's different than the ochre beak, you should be fine. I'm going to paint around the outside of the eye. So I leave the inside white, coming right down the side of the hat, right to the neck, right to that bow, and then back up. Just painting that face yellow and that little triangle divot where the hat, we're painting in there as well, yellow. And remember, we're going to be tracing around the outside with black. So if there are spots where you've gone beyond, black will automatically correct that. So at this point, we have ochre feet and an ochre beak. We have a yellow face, a red hat, a red bow, and a sap green coat. And our nice, I just used phthalo blue on the background. We have a gray cat with a white hat, or sorry, a red hat with a little white rim and a little white pom-pom at the top. I'm switching to my 0 brush. It's the tiniest one that I have. And I'm using green, not the sap green. It's up to you if you want to use the sap green, if that's all you have, or if you have a different green. But I'm using just a little bit deeper green. And I'm going to start just to put the light string coming around on my cat's body. So our cat body should be dry by now. And then we'll just put that string for the lights. And it just sort of circles around the back of the body. So it just circles around the outside edge. Just by going beyond your edge, you'll get that effect. And I'll do the same down below, just circle around the outside of the body, just so that it ends at that point. Come down and circle around the outside of the body again. And I'll use that same green just at the base of each light. I'm just going to put a little dot or a little square, a little marking where my light is going to come off the end. So just a little dot or a little square just at the end of each light. And while I have that same green, I've got a little Christmas tree or a little ornament or something coming off the top of the hat, a little sprig of greenery just on both sides. And they could be the same, they can be different. And while we're here with the kitty and the lights, let's paint some Christmas ornament colors. So I have ultramarine blue I'm putting on there. I'm just going to do three ultramarine blue. To you what colors you like to use. I'm going to switch from that blue into a nice bright red. Just do 3 colors, just different places in red. And it looks like I have 4 left, and I'm just going to do those 4 in yellow. And then the same as before, I'm going to leave that to dry before I do any more on it. Otherwise, I'll be banging my arm against it or rubbing against, and I don't want to disturb that. So now I'm moving back to the duck. And this is where we're going to start to outline and use our black. You can use your 0 brush, you can use a number 3 brush, whatever you're comfortable using. We're going to fill in that patch on the top of the head of his hat. Fill in that little patch, and I'm going to give some little stitching just along the sides. Just a little bit of stitching. And I'm filling in that little tie at the end of the hat between the tail end and the bottom. I'm going to paint that triangle around the eye, around that white spot. And I'll just put a little dot in the center for the eye. Now it has personality. And I'll just use my black and trace around the mouth. There's a little lip on the end of the beak. Just a little lip. Little dots on the top of the beak. And I'll continue to trace around the bottom of the hat. From that stitching right down. Over the top. So we're tracing all around the hat right down to the neck. And if your shoulders are up high, just drop them down. And you can also trace below the mouth down to the right down to the neck where the bow is. And we'll come around that bow. So this is where if you needed to do any adjustments or correction, where you might have gone beyond the line, this is where you can make that adjustment. And coming down the front of the coat. And in the center, we have a big button. So we'll paint that big button on. And coming around the outside at the back of the coat. Down along the bottom. Do that little V in there. And a fun little thing you can do to make it look like that coat has flipped open, you can do a little flip at the corner and just paint that in, and it will look like that coat flipped open. And we can trace around those feet. Using the same color as your background, but without watering it down, we're going to give this duck a little bit of grounding, but looking like it's in a puddle. So it's the same color as your background, but not adding water. So we've grounded it, making it look like it's in water. And you can put a few little droplets coming up if you like. It might look like it's really, really wet. And moving over to Kitty. We want to give Kitty some grounding as well. So the same color background, this sap green, but only wetting your paint so that it goes on the brush, not actually getting a lot of water on there. We're going to start to give some grounding to where your cat is sitting. So this needs to go underneath the cat, underneath the body, all around the tail. So it's more of a shadow. And then I'm going to use a zero brush with black paint. I'm going to go around that pom-pom at the top of the hat. I'm going to go around the base of the hat, around the outside. And as I go around that white at the bottom of the hat and between the red and the white, it will give that nice look of crystal white for the cat. We want to create those whiskers just with black with my zero brush. And those little eyes. It doesn't look too impressed to be wearing all this Christmas paraphernalia. And the nose. And I'm going to trace around the feet. And around the tail. And what's left to do is to put your signature somewhere on your artwork. You've done all this work, so go ahead and take credit for it. And you give it as a gift. And you see it later, you'll say, oh, that's mine. I know that's my signature. So you'll know that it's yours. And there's 2 Christmas cards for you. If you have people you want to give a card to, it's kind of a fun thing to do. Oh, Georgia says retirement homes love to get the cards for their residents. What a great idea. I hope you all enjoyed doing this one. It's just a little bit different. It's a Christmas card. So I'm wearing my Christmas apron for the season, so I hope you like that.